So today's lesson is going to start with right from the beginning, catching, grooming, tacking, handling your horse. Going to run through kind of the way I go about doing this. Um, this is Annie. Annie is a mule here for training. Hi, Annie. Good girl. And to start out with, one of the first things that I do is make sure my halter and lead rope is all ready to go before I get started. I have been using a rope halter with Annie. I use it for most horses that I have come into training. So to use the rope halter, the things that I do to get it prepared, I hold the noseband and the headpiece all in one hand. And then I fold the lead rope back and forth on top of each other and just drape it over my arm so that it's all ready to go when I get her haltered. So Annie has been very helpful to us just coming up. If I have a horse that moves off away from me, here, I'm going to move away from Annie. Come on. You can follow me. All right, hang on. There we go. Okay, so when I approach a horse that's not right up next to me, the first thing I do is make sure I get their attention. So I'm not coming up with them not, Annie, not aware that I'm coming. So she's kind of giving me a side eye. She knows that I'm here. Good girl. So I'll try to engage them and actually get them to try to take a step towards me. This is super important, especially if you have a horse that doesn't like to get caught. If you need to take a step back when they engage, just so they get a little release of pressure and aren't feeling pressured, that's really good. Good girl. And we've done this with Annie, so she knows what to expect. Good girl. So I'm actually going to get Annie to come back over here a little bit. Max, get out. Okay, good girl. So when I go to halter, I have my two pieces in the halter in one hand. And when haltering with a rope halter, the best way to do it is to come up here. I'll give them a pet, make sure they're nice and relaxed. Good girl. And when you have a rope halter, the best way to halter them is to actually give them a little hug around the neck. Separate the two pieces so the noseband is in your left hand. Then just work your way up. Slide the noseband over the nose. And then come around here and tie. And then you're not throwing rope anywhere. You're not throwing their head up, and it encourages them to put their head down into the halter instead of sticking their head up. Good girl. So also, come on. If you are using a rope halter, the way a rope halter is tied is once you put these pieces through the loop, you pull it up where you need it to, and then you loop it around the back and tie it below this loop, not above, so that it can be tightened down as tight as you possibly can go, and it's still really easy to undo if it ever happens. Good girl. Okay. So, good girl. And Annie is not super reactive to me touching her. We've done a lot of this work with her already. But one of the things that I do when I'm interacting with the horse, touching them, is I just pay attention to how they're responding to me. If they're engaging with me, if they're drawing away from my touch, if they're cranky anywhere on their body, like if they don't like me touching them anywhere. Good girl. If they're hyper observant. And Annie, being the mule she is, absolutely loves to get nasty, rolling in things. We're going to grab a curry. So when I'm leading a horse around, um, you may have noticed that when she had a little hesitation, instead of pulling on her, I created a little energy just to get her walked with me. So like right here, if she doesn't come with me when I pick up a little contact on the rope like that, good girl, then instead of pulling harder, I'll just try and create a little bit of energy to get her to come along with me. Good girl. Come in. So if she doesn't go with a little cluck or anything, I might just use my rope to create a little energy, but I don't get into a tug of war battle with them. Good. Good. So when I'm handling a horse, grooming, until I know that they can be super solid, just standing there and relaxing. Oh, I know, I'm sorry. That's your back spot. With everything I'm doing, I don't tie them. I ask them to stand ground tied. That way I can interact with them and correct them, asking them to stay back on their place. So Annie doesn't really like her head being touched, or her ears. That is one of her things. So used to be I couldn't even touch between her eyes. Now she's letting me do that, but when I go higher, she's not a fan. So I don't hyperfixate on trying to touch those areas that she doesn't let me right now. Instead of working on that, we've been working on some other things. If she lets me rub her real gentle, then that's great. But she doesn't really like my hand coming up this way. So if I'm going to pet her up here, I try to go from the back side and make it nice and relaxing. And then right now she's okay with me kind of touching here, but she doesn't want me to go much higher. So I'm not going to worry about that right now. That's not something that absolutely needs to be dealt with right now. And a lot of times those things start to go away as they begin to trust you more. Right. So this is already a lot better than how she was for me when she came. And she's going to be more trusting of different people. So her mama was able to do this more when she came than I was able to. And now she's letting me do this more, right? All right. So with the grooming, I can drop my long rope and ask her to stand there. Well, if she goes to follow me, I'm just going to say, nope, stay there. Good girl. Nope, stand there. And normally we do this at the round pen panel instead of right in the middle. Come on. So we're going to a different spot than she's used to. Good girl. But this is good because it's giving her something new to learn. So I'm going to come over here, grab my curry. All of my brushes are super soft because most horses do not like stiff brushes. And I'm just going to give her a little curry. And when I do this, I pay attention to how the horses are responding. Are they flinching any? Are they pulling their head up in tension? Are they tensing their skin? A lot of horses have very sensitive skin, which is why I don't like using stiff brushes, super stiff brushes, metal curries, things like that. Annie loves getting mud literally everywhere she possibly can. And because she's really sensitive around her head, I'm just going to go nice and easy and try not to create any more problems. Good girl. So as I go, I'm just going to keep a hold of the end of my rope, but I'm going to try and let it stay draped on the ground so that she knows that I'm asking her to stand there and I'm not pulling her around anywhere as I'm moving her around to groom. Good girl. And as a horse or mule becomes calmer with the grooming and tacking process, then I will start looping the rope or around the panel, or um, tie them with something that's like a um, not a hard tie in case they get nervous while I'm tacking them up. But I just want every single time I handle them to be nice and relaxed. I'm not going to hard tie a horse while I'm doing anything with them until I know that they can be doing everything I'm asking them calmly and quietly without fidgeting and moving around. And I think you got more mud on this side, girly. So I just take note of everything that she's doing. If she's moving away from me more on one side than the other, if she starts drawing away, I'll just pause. She wasn't there, but I'll just pause and give her a second until she re-engages. Oh, there you go. And the most important part is just to slow down and go at their pace where you can pay attention to what they are doing. Yeah, good girl. See, with the grooming, she doesn't mind me touching up here now. Good girl. And I'll just keep going, and again try to keep the rope in the same spot, coming off her chin, so it's on the ground. And that's going to be her ground tie. If I have a horse that's moving around a lot more and more fidgety, you have to be careful that they're not stepping on the rope. But you still want them to just stand here nicely like this. You got it everywhere. Good girl, Annie. And some horses, I'll put both of my hands on them if they're more sensitive. If they're more relaxed like Annie, you don't really need to use two hands on their body. But if they're more sensitive and reactive, then I'll put one hand here and then just kind of alternate what I'm doing so that they aren't getting surprised every time I lift up and set back down. Good girl. So then I'm going to use the brush. And I always try to go front to back, top to bottom. One, it helps clean them faster. Two, they get into a routine of what to expect. And that makes it easier. Oh, you got an itch? Good girl. And while I'm doing this, I'm just taking note of what she is doing while I'm grooming her, if she's getting tense, if she's staying nice and relaxed, if she's paying attention to the other horses. I don't mind her looking around as long as she doesn't get distracted and try to walk off. Or if she's hyper fixating, even if she's not moving her feet, if she's staying fixated on something, I'll just ask her to bring her awareness back to me. And my goal is really for them to stay just nice and quiet like this, aware of what I am doing, aware of what is going on around them, but not fixating on other things. I'm just enjoying this process. hoof pick. I won't pull their foot off the ground. I don't get into a pushing and pulling more. I just wait for them to give me their foot. And Annie is doing really well with this now. When you get into fighting with them and trying to push them over and take their foot off the ground, it makes them more tense and brace more. So, good girl. So I'll just move here, run my hand down. I might give a little squeeze if she doesn't pick up, but I don't get into a pulling and pushing match. Just be patient and wait for them to relax and give it to me. Good girl. And if I am being able to do this without her moving around like she is for me, this is where I then, oh, come back up here. There you go. Good girl. Nope. Thank you. When they can do this easily, then I'll start working with having them do it well tied. Good girl. Good. Good girl. That was very nice. Thank you. Good girl. All right. Come on. We're walk now. Annie. There you go. Come on. So let her know that we're getting ready to go somewhere. Get her attention back on me. And we're going to go for a walk. And I'll bring the tap over to the block. And again, I normally do this with her standing over at the panels. I know. Come on. But we're going to change this up a little today. All right. So, same thing with tacking. I'm going to find a spot for her that gives me room to work. And Annie likes checking out the tack before I put it on her. And I have no problem with that. Good girl. So she tends to be a little bit more sensitive about the tacking still. So I'm just going to be aware of that. And I'm just going to be a little bit more engaged with her. So I'm going to have my rope a little shorter, but I'm not holding it tight. I don't want to pull her head around. I still want her to make the choice to stand here. So, yeah. So there's already her saying she's not 100% comfortable with this. And so I'll just take my sweet time. Thank you. Good girl. The more you rush with things like this when they're not 100% comfortable, the worse you make it. And that is why Annie still has these reactions. And they've gotten a lot better. She used to run away from me when she saw the pads. Good girl. But just slowing down makes them feel like they can relax and breathe. Good girl. And until I can leave the rope on the ground and fully tack her up and her not be twitching and flinching and putting her head up, then I will not tie her to tack her. Thank you. I know this is not your favorite part. I know. Good girl. Come here. And this matters not just to make tacking easier, but if you skip over these little things where they hold tension, then when you get on, they are holding that tension. And if you have a super broke finished horse, they might just be jigging forward, they might not do anything, depending on the horse, but they might just keep adding those tensions until something happens that they can no longer ignore. So my job is to try and help get rid of these tensions along the way, so that when I am riding her, she is totally relaxed and engaged with me and not holding on to tension from our groundwork. You got something in your teeth? Sound like you have something in your teeth. Good girl. So Annie, good girl. No, step up here. Thank you. Good girl. Good girl. And Annie is really sensitive about her withers, which is part of this. She doesn't like things on her withers. All right. Put your head down. Good girl. Good. That was nice. So when I use the head down, I'm not pulling her head down. I'm asking with a little bit of pressure and rewarding any sort of try that I get. And that just helps me bring her brain back to me, get her focused, and it also helps release some of her bodily tension in her posture just by, just asking her to put her head down a little bit. And again, it's not a forced thing. It's just me asking her and waiting for her, and we've done this a lot, so she's getting good putting her head down. I know. Good girl. Good girl. Good girl. That was really nice, Annie. So this will look different with different horses. Some have no reaction to this. Some are really great with the pads and tack, just like she was with the grooming. Some are going to be a lot more anxious. She was a lot more anxious when she came. Some get very flighty. Some get really tense and braced. But the big thing is just slowing down enough where you can pay attention to what they're communicating and help them out. So this saddle tends to fit the mules that I have better here. And it also happens to be pretty light, so yay for me when I have to do this. Good girl. And you can see just that little bit of tension right there. And the worst thing you can do is rush them. Good girl. So if I have a horse that fits better in my heavier saddle, but they're super not okay with my saddle, I will do all of this work with one of my lighter ones so that I can maneuver it better and help them get nice and relaxed and not hold all this tension. And then when they are responding well, then I can just put the saddle up there without this. Then I'll switch my saddle to the heavier one and or whatever that fits them, so that I'm saving myself some muscle. Good girl. And you can clearly see she's not happy about this right now. She's turning her head away from me. She's swishing her tail. And some of this is in anticipation because I am riding her. And she's not 100% comfortable and relaxed with what people have done with her in the past. And she did not have very good experience with people previously. So some of this is definitely anticipation, but it's my job to help her through it. And if you have a horse that has this anticipation, it's your job to help them through it. There you go. What a good girl. What a good girl. And it does not have to be perfect. I think that's one thing. She will not get to the point where she's 100% perfect with me putting this on, because she is holding some tension from the past. And that doesn't go away in one day. It goes away over time. But what it does mean is if she's still holding a little bit of tension with the tack, she's holding tension other places. So, yeah, good girl. The other places that involves the tack, which means I'm not going to jump on her and go giddy up for a trail ride if she's still not comfortable with tacking. But it might mean I take a pause on tacking and do some other work when she gets to a good point of her being nice and relaxed. There you go. That was better. Yeah. Now, when I'm starting a horse for the first time, then I do want this almost perfect. If they don't have past trauma involving tack and stuff, I will have this perfect before I go on to anything else. If I'm undoing things, like I said, I'm not going to just jump on and go for a ride because I'll get launched. But I don't spend forever fixating on something, because sometimes when you fixate on something, it makes them more tense. But I want her relaxed. I want her okay with this. She doesn't have to be 100% perfect about this. I'm just going to look for better, a change in the right direction. And each time that change gets a little bit better. So same thing with the girth. Good girl. And I do have her on some stuff for her tummy because she does have a very sensitive tummy, which could mean that she's dealing with some stuff, ulcers. Girl. So if you had her tied and was doing this, this could result in her backpedaling, hauling back on the rope, and freaking out, breaking things, hurting herself. Or she might not take it to that extreme. Good. 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 Thank you. It's very nice. I know you're super thrilled about this. Yeah. So I will say that when I've been getting on her, I have been making sure that anytime she's having these kinds of reactions that are a little bit stronger with the girth and she's not happy, I'm not just skipping ahead and jumping on her. Like, that's not what I mean by things don't have to be perfect before you move on. I look for a good change before I move on to the next thing. Good girl. But that doesn't mean just skip ahead when you get something decent and just jump on and yeehaw. It means I can go to some other groundwork and help her relax mentally. Because part of this, or a lot of this, is just mental tension from discomfort in the past, and her tummy was upset, so she is anticipating that too. But I don't just skip ahead of all of these reactions and jump on. I will work through them. And if she's doing great, and she's nice and relaxed and responsive to what I'm doing, I'll come back to it after taking a break, work on it some more, and go back to some groundwork. until we get through it. She has a chance to process. She's not as tense. She's not trying to escape. And then I'll have my ride on her. Good. But part of the process of doing this with an animal that has had some trauma means some days it feels like Groundhog Day, where you feel like you're doing the same thing over and over, and over time it gets better, but it doesn't happen overnight. And when I'm girthing, I never pull it up hard and fast on any animal, even if they're totally okay with the girth. I just make it snug enough that it's not going to fall off, and slowly make it tighter as we go. And all my Western saddles have double latigos on them so that I can tighten them evenly from both sides to help keep the saddle straighter. Good girl. And to also work on both sides of the brain. I know I made it slightly snug. Slightly snug. There you go. Good. And so from here, continuing my session with her, I would just go into some groundwork, and then I would go back, loosen the girth, put it back on, take the saddle off maybe, put it back on, and just keep working until she had less of these reactions and she was more relaxed. And then in the process, I would do some groundwork, like maybe having her give to pressure a little bit, and we're going to have lessons on this later, so good. Good. That's very nice. But we'd get into more groundwork to give her something else to focus on and not continue fixating on the saddle and the girth and her discomfort. And then I would go back to the saddle. And we just go back and forth a few times until she can breathe and relax nicely through it. Good girl. Good girl. So, and when you go to untack your horse, it's the same thing. They need to be able to stand nice and quiet and relaxed. They need to be engaged with you, but not braced and hyper alert. Just nice and relaxed, and you need to be able to take your tack off without them dancing around or moving off. And I untack just the opposite of how I tacked up, just making sure they're nice and engaged through the process. And all the way back out to the barn or to the pasture or the stall, wherever you're taking them after your session. They just need to stay engaged. You need to be aware of how you're leading them through the process. And we'll have more lessons on all of that. And until you are not touching them anymore, you need to be aware of what's going on.